What is up, everybody? Welcome back. We got college football episode 2 of Slow Your Roll. I'm joined by Jake and Connor. Say what's up, guys.
How's it
How's it
going?
All right, good stuff. Way not to talk over each other, but bowl season is upon us. College football playoff season, Heisman season. It's all finally arrived after the long year that honestly felt pretty short, but nonetheless, we are here. The Heisman race is over. Who is winning it? I think we all know the answer, but what do you guys think?
I think it's Jayden Daniels. Honestly, I really think that, like I said last time, I think his stats carry over. And with Bo Nix, I think if Bo Nix won the Pac-12 title, I think if Bo Nix won the Pac-12 title, and I think he got Oregon a playoff spot, I'd give it to him. But on the biggest stage, it just didn't really work out for him, and he couldn't really lead his team to a victory. So I think Jayden Daniels has secured it. I think it's his to lose, and I think that if it doesn't go to him, I'd be pretty shocked right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Jake, do you kind of
Yeah,
agree with that?
yeah, no, I gotta agree with that. A couple weeks ago, I took the stance of Bo Nix being 1A and Jayden Daniels being 1B just because of the impact that Bo Nix has had like, on his team actually being in that playoff conversation. But yeah, like what Connor said, you can't be behind Washington that entire game basically and then, get swept by them and then still, be the front runner for the Heisman. You look at what Jayden Daniels has done on the ground, in the air, and just overall like commanding his offense. It's been really impressive. The numbers don't lie. I think it's Jayden Daniels. I don't think there's someone who's even remotely close behind him.
Yeah, by far, Jaden Daniels is the odds-on favorite. Ask anybody in Vegas, they'll tell you. And one of the really interesting things about him being where he is in the Heisman race is, assuming nothing like extreme happens, and they're handing it to him in New York, he becomes the 12th player ever to win it, where his team had 3 losses in a season, which is crazy because it really takes an impressive season, but also kind of a down year from players on those top teams, because those players on those top teams are going to get a little favoritism. Like Connor was saying with the Bo Nix situation, if they had won, Bo Nix probably would be winning the Heisman. So I think it's kind of one of those situations where stars have to align for a player to win. Well, his team is like not even in contention for the college football playoff. So that'll be something interesting to see moving forward as well as we get into like the expansion of the playoffs next year. Will there be like less favoritism towards like the top 4 teams and their best players when there's 12 teams making the playoff? What do you guys think about that?
I think that is a very good point. I think that when it comes to the 12-team playoff, that's going to be the future of college football. I think it's going to be a big part of the Heisman race. I think that people are going to the main reason Michael Penix is in there is because he's 12-0. It's because he's undefeated. It's because he's leading his team to the college football playoff. Are his stats really good? They're not as good as Jayden Daniels. They're up there, but they're not the best I've ever seen. It's just the fact that he, as a quarterback, has led Washington to an undefeated season. And the main fact that he's in that top 4, I think that with the new 12 team, I think it's going to be a lot more stats related. I think it's going to be a lot more how is this guy producing all around instead of how is his team's record? How is the team doing? It's going to be more of a personal award, which I think it should be. I think the Heisman is the best player in the country, not the best team in the country, obviously. So you got to put that into consideration. I think players like Ndamukong Suh in the past could have won it. I think defensive players should be more thought into this conversation as it goes along. Obviously, we have players like the Honey Badger, LSU. We had Ndamukong Suh, who I still think is the most dominant defensive lineman I've ever seen play. It's special talents like that who I think should be up for the award, and I think that the 12-team playoff could definitely benefit in that category.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned like the defensive player situation. The way I've always thought about it is like it would take a generational type of season for somebody to win that award at a defensive position, not playing any offense at all. But do you guys know who the last person to finish second in the Heisman voting as a defensive player was?
I mean, I know Jabril Peppers was up for it a bit ago, but I don't think he even got to second.
No, I think he was 4th.
It was
in
Aiden
the sport.
Hutchinson. It was Aiden Hutchinson,
Oh,
actually. And it wasn't
yeah.
even a generational season, which was a
No.
really crazy thing. You know, there were a lot of people that honestly didn't even make the finalists. People like Kenneth Walker wasn't even invited. I think he finished 5th or 6th in Heisman voting. So that was a really weird one for me because, you know, what was the thing about Michigan that year? Oh, yeah, they beat Ohio State finally and made the playoffs. So it really kind of just goes to show how much record plays a role in it because that though Hutchinson had a great year, it wasn't one of those years where you sit back and say, man, we really need to think about giving this guy the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, I completely agree. I forgot about how Hutchinson was second. I thought he was. I knew he got invited. I didn't realize how close he was actually. That is kind of crazy to me. I think there definitely is. There's top team bias with that one too. I think Kenneth Walker definitely deserved an invite to New York. I think he definitely should have been top 4 in my honest opinion. But it is kind of cool to see that happen. I think it needs to happen more. There's a big story with Aiden Hutchinson, obviously. Um, but yeah, it's just I think that there should be like more spotlight on them, if you know what I mean, on
Yeah,
individual performance instead of team performance.
yeah, for sure. I mean, we live in a quarterback world essentially with, you know, both NFL, you know, the MVP's quarterback award at this point in time. So, but yeah, you guys both made great points there. You know, tomorrow, pretty big day for a lot of people. Everybody's going to be tuning into one specific college football game, and that is the annual Army Navy game. What do you guys think of that? How many times are they going to throw the football this year?
More than JJ McCarthy, but not enough to make it interesting. I don't know, man. If I wanted to see a game as hard as this one, I think I would just watch Iowa's practices, man. I don't know. I think there may not be a lot of offense. I think this game could be over in an hour with the new clock and with the fact, it's just going to be running it down each other's throats. Um, yeah, it's gonna be a trench battle like in World War One, dude. Like this is not gonna be an enjoyable football game if you're about like the long passes and stuff. But if you're a true football fan, even if both these teams aren't really that impressive this year, it's still a great timeless rivalry. And we're running out of college football left before we gotta take a long hiatus from it. So it's definitely worth checking out.
This is where I disagree. I think Army Navy is one of the most underrated, one of the most fun matchups of the year. I love Smash Mouth football. I love the style of play that they do. I think it is one of the most fun games to watch. It's where boys become men. It's where the whole world watches two teams just go at it in the trenches. I think it is a trench battle, yes, and some people don't like that. Me personally, I love it. I think it's a physical. I think it's a fun. I think the game never has bad attendance. It's always sold out. No matter what the records are. Army Navy is a classic. I'm definitely going to be tuning into it tomorrow, and I'm extremely excited to watch it as always.
Hey man,
Hey,
I love Smash Mouth football as much as the next guy, but when the over under is like in the single digits and the under's gonna hit, I mean, you just can't interest me in that. At that point, I'm just gonna watch, soccer or something if I want to see no one score. So
you know, one of the biggest things about this game, honestly, every single year is the uniforms. Every year they bring out a new uniform combo. And honestly, looking at the uniforms for this year, they may be my favorite from this game's history. Like overall, I don't know if you guys have got a chance to look at them. If you haven't, I'm going to post them on our Twitter, so go check that out if you guys haven't seen them. But they are amazing. I really like navies. Their helmets are beautiful, and then armies are just clean, solid uniforms. You just can't go wrong, and it's really cool to see the effort put in for this every single year. I mean, what do you guys think about that?
I'm a uniform geek. I love college football uniforms. I think that like if I'm rebuilding a team in NCAA football, for instance, uniforms are my number one thing. I think that um, I don't want to be a fan of a team that has bad uniforms. Me personally, I'm not. I'm thankful for. Um, but I think that no, I mean Army and Navy uniforms are amazing. They're always good every single year, and it's also one of the main reasons why I watch the game as well. It's awesome to see. I mean, they never wear them again, which kind of sucks. But I think it's just awesome. I love seeing the new unis every year.
Absolutely, Jake.
yeah, I mean, unbiasedly, of course, I think TCU has probably like one of the best, if not the best, set of uniforms out of any college football team. You know, the purple, the white, the silver, and obviously the spikes around the collar is awesome. But yeah, I mean, I kind of like that they don't do it every year because it makes you look forward to it next year and like what they're going to come up with. I do remember a few years back, Navy had this horrible one of like a battleship like on the ocean or something, and it was like probably the worst. What?
Those were fire. What do you mean?
No, those were the worst helmets I've ever seen in my life, dude. It looked like a poster. That was not it. That looks like a greeting card.
I need a refresher on this. I'm looking this up for clarification. Feel free to debate
on this. That was the worst helmet I've ever seen in my life.
Those were amazing. What are you talking about?
We're talking about Navy, right? We're talking about Navy, right? Correct.
Yeah, we're talking about Navy. It was like 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
I think I like it. I don't like the transition to like the dark blue just plain in the middle of the helmet once it gets away from the picture on the side. If they had just continued with the ocean the whole way up, I think it'd look better.
Oh, those are sick, Jake. You're out of your mind.
No, this is horrible.
You're out of your mind.
This made me never look at the game back the same ever again. This is horrible.
You guys have both seen this year's uniforms, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Jake, have you? Okay, yeah. Those
it's a little bit more minimalist than a boat on a helmet, but yeah.
Okay. Moving on, folks. We all know Jake doesn't like boats. So, next subject. CFP, there was quite a bit of controversy in this. The committee was left with a very difficult situation, which many anticipated to happen. Thankfully, Oregon didn't also win, because it would be real ugly if Oregon had also won. So, honestly, let's just start with the controversy. What do you guys think about the Florida State situation not making it? Is it the right decision, or is it like...
I'm going to go with Connor first.
Okay, Connor.
So, for me personally... a Power 5 conference champion should make it in. A Power 5 undefeated conference champion should make it in. They did everything right. They won all their games. They have one of the best defenses in the country. They have other talent than just a quarterback. I know Alabama is probably the Alabama has been playing really well lately. They just beat Georgia. I was really hoping this didn't happen to Florida State. They took care of business against Louisville, who was a top 25 team, by the way. They handled business with them. They did everything they were supposed to do, and they somehow got punished for it. That is what I hate about college football right now. They saw the TV ratings for Alabama. They saw the TV ratings for what Texas could have been as well. They went for money over what they should have done, and I hate it. I hate every single part to do with this decision. I like Alabama personally. I have friends that go to Alabama. I have people that I know who root for Alabama who are good people. I like watching. I think Milroe's is a really good quarterback. But I hate Florida State being left out here. I absolutely despise it. I don't care if Travis is hurt. They have a guy behind him, Rodemaker, I think is what his name. I forgot. Yeah, Rodemaker. I think he's a talented guy. And the only reason that they didn't get in is because they started a true freshman third-string quarterback in the ACC championship, and they still won. That's how good it is as a team, and they still got punished for it. That's how I see it.
Let me ask you a follow-up there. If Alabama and Florida State played tomorrow, who would win in your eyes?
Do they have Tay Rodemaker?
Played tomorrow. So yes, I don't think Jordan Travis can play tomorrow.
I think Florida State can win. I think Florida State's defense is that good.
Okay.
I think that I don't care how good Alabama's playing right now. Florida State has proven what they are. They've proven how tough they are. They've proven even through controversy. I don't care if they've had close games. Every team has had close games. Alabama almost lost to USF. Alabama lost to Texas. Alabama has had they've had close games, so they should not have been close games.
And you know what? One of the funny things I've seen on X is people saying if they were playing Michigan, they'd lose by 40. Nobody has scored more than 30 on Florida State, so I don't know where you could possibly fathom them losing by 40. I don't know where that's coming from. So I definitely touched on that over there on X and let some people have it, but I think it's close in terms of the team's strength right now. I mean, Jake, would you agree with that?
I mean, here you like I've been, texting you guys individually about it, like my opinions on it. I think it's ridiculous. I think this is where college football is starting to collapse in on itself now. We got conference realignment, we got all the NIL stuff out of control, and this is where college football, to me, is becoming more of a circus than a sport because it's about the views, it's about the entertainment, it's ran by clowns. Like to look at a team that has not lost a game this year. In the defense that people who do want Texas and Alabama in, they keep making is, well, Florida State could lose. They talk about the hypotheticals. They could get crushed. Florida State hasn't lost this year. People were saying the same thing when they were going to play Louisville. When Travis went down, they were like, oh, it's over. Florida State's not even going to win out. Florida State did win out. We can talk about a team that could lose, but hasn't yet. Or we can talk about two teams that already have lost. Bama, obviously, a great win over number one Georgia at the time, and Texas beat Bama. And let's be real, that's the only reason Texas is in. I know people are looking at Bama as they're the culprit, but honestly, we need to look at the University of Texas because this team, if we want to talk about Florida State not having an easy schedule, Texas had the softest cupcake schedule out of the four teams, and it's not even close. Okay, they beat Rice, Wyoming, Baylor, TCU, BYU, Iowa State, all these teams not even making a bowl game. Their best win is against Bama, who is 5. That's respectable. But then they also lose to 12 Oklahoma. They beat 22 Oklahoma State to win the Big 12. Oklahoma State and Alabama are Texas's only ranked teams. And what drives me crazy about this whole thing as a TCU student, I mean, go to the comments, I don't care, is they're saying like, oh, we don't want to repeat at TCU. Because yes, we got blown out in the Natty. Georgia was a great team. But like, why blame a team that beat Michigan to get to the CFP? Because no matter if the score was 65-7, unless you went to Texas Christian University or you went to University of Georgia Athens, your team was not in the national championship last year. And it's that simple. Like, unless you were those two teams, you didn't make it to the Natty. Why blame TCU for losing? We should blame Michigan for losing to TCU. We should blame Ohio State for losing to Georgia and setting that whole thing up in the first place. If you want to play the blame game, TCU last year beat more ranked opponents than Texas did this year. TCU last year beat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ranked opponents. Texas has 2 this year, including the Big 12 title game. So what has Texas done to get in besides beat Bama? What I'm saying is Bama's a legit team. Florida State's hurt right now, and yes, they're not the same team they were in the beginning of the year. But to punish someone, like Connor was saying, for being 13-0, for looking at adversity with a third-string quarterback and still winning your conference is ridiculous. It's blasphemy. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if this intentionally or unintentionally was about getting Florida State, Clemson, some of the bigger schools that are still strangling to have to join the Big Ten or the SEC. I really do. I would not be surprised if this was gerrymandering, but for college football.
That point you brought up about people saying we don't want another TCU, I think picking out TCU of all the teams you could possibly pick is about the laziest thing you could do because they won their semifinal game. So
Yeah,
I don't really know. I like maybe put the other two teams, but like it's just like what? They weren't the worst team there, obviously, if they made the championship. So that's a really lazy thing to say. There's definitely other teams you can pick out that have been put in, teams like Notre Dame a few years back. I don't know if you guys remember that. They played, I think it was Bama first round and got absolutely destroyed. I mean, I think one of the first touchdowns of the game was like Najee Harris hurdling a dude and then going like 70 yards or something like that. But point is, it's like, it's just a lazy way to think about that, and it's not objective at all. So I don't think that's a fair thing to say when thinking about Florida State either. I think their defense is absolutely incredible. Though I do think Bama at this moment in time would win if they were to play. I don't think it's like a big gap. I don't think it's like here and here. It's like right here.
It's so close.
Yeah. But yeah, honestly, outside of the CFP, we have some exciting bowl games to look at. Some very gimmicky ones, such as the Pop-Tart Bowl and the Mayo Bowl, stuff like that. It's always a good time, those type of games. But what games are you guys looking at? What are you guys excited to see in terms of bowl games?
For me, the one I'm looking at the most right now, the most interesting one besides college football playoff, is the Fiesta Bowl with Liberty and Oregon. So that was the one that really confused me because there were a lot of teams that could have been chosen over Liberty, but Liberty is undefeated. They've gone through their whole schedule. Obviously, it's Group of 5, so it's not gonna be anything special. They actually have one of the lowest ranked schedules in the country, but
The lowest actually.
Oh, they have the lowest,
the worst schedule
lowest.
in the
Wow,
entire
okay.
country.
But they did what they were supposed to do. They took care of business. So they're facing an Oregon team that Bo Nix is gonna play. He is gonna play. Oregon might win by 50. This Liberty team is not that good. This Liberty team is not that good. I truly think that they're gonna be put in their place possibly. But it is interesting the fact that a lot of Oregon players have entered the portal. Players that like starting defensive backs like Turquoise Bridges. They've had some other wide receivers leave as well. Hudson. They've had some talents leave. Obviously not all of them are gone. Liberty has had nobody leave from what I've seen. They haven't really had many people enter the portal. That's just because they want to finish out the season and they want to make a statement on why they are undefeated. Me personally, that's not going to happen. I think Oregon's going to win by a good amount of points here. Jake, do you have any thoughts on the Fiesta Bowl?
Not on the Fiesta Bowl, but one because I don't think that one's going to be close, if I'm being honest. But the Sun Bowl, that one's got your school in it, Connor. I think that's a great game. Oregon State and Notre Dame. I think that could be, a fantastic one. These are two teams that have had their fair share of success and shortcomings. I think they are pretty even. Another interesting one, just for the matchup, but, it could turn into a snooze fest, is the Citrus Bowl, the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl with Iowa and Tennessee.
Yes.
Tennessee's been really disappointing this year, but, Iowa just plays an alien form of football, man, and I would love to see who breaks first. Tennessee's game-making and playmaking ability that hasn't been present through all games this year, or Iowa's lockdown defense is going to be interesting.
One thing I will say about the Sun Bowl, over half our roster's gone.
Yeah,
so
I was gonna mention that. It would have been close, but I don't really know anymore, considering their number 1 and number 2 quarterback are both no longer with the program, and on top of that, there's other guys. I think Connor just was attacked.
I think the hurricane is at my house. Anyway, our
DJ Digger talking bad about him, Con.
Yeah, I know. DJ sent a hit out on me. DJU and Aiden Childs are both gone in the portal. Our quarterback though, Ben Goldbranson, has a 7-1 record as a starter. From last year? I will put this in mind. Yes, our tight end's gone. Yes, some of our wide receivers have graduated. Yes, some of our O-linemen are gone. Our middle linebacker is gone. 2 of our corners are gone. Do I need to continue? We have a lot of guys.
Bro tried to tell us he wasn't that worried about the quarterback. Bro tried to tell us he wasn't that worried about the quarterback, and then listed everybody else that wasn't there either.
Oh, and to top it off, our running back has a DUI, so he's not going to play in the bowl game.
Okay, so guys, moving on to a game that's actually debatable. What do we got in terms of that? Missouri, Ohio State. I think that could be an interesting one.
Yes. Missouri, Ohio State. I think that one's going to be an excellent one. I think Missouri's offense stacks up really well. They have Luther Burden, one of the best wide receivers in the country, in my opinion. Former 5-star recruit. I think he's very, very talented. They have a really, really good offense, and Ohio State has a really good defense. We'll see how many opt-outs happen. I haven't seen – but there's been a lot of portal entries for Ohio State, but not you guys. Julian Fleming was one of them, but he's been a 3rd, 4th-string wide receiver. They had Chip Trainum, who was a backup running back. They've had guys.
Well, and Kyle McCord.
Oh, yeah, and Kyle McCord.
That makes a pretty big difference.
Well, to be fair, the reason I didn't say it was a big thing, Was he really that good?
I mean,
Was Common Core? I mean, I don't know.
no, but I think it's tough to play a whole season with a starting quarterback, and then all of a sudden, when you have your biggest game of the season, or second biggest game, I guess, for Ohio State, it's like, oh yeah, he's not going to be there anymore.
I think Devin Brown will be fine at backup for them. I think Common Core isn't really some guy that you lose him and you're like, oh no, it's the worst thing in the world. I think that Devin Brown could go in there and beat Missouri.
Okay.
I think he could do it.
Okay, just more of like a
I mean,
game.
when you talk about good quarterbacks, you talk about them leading an offense. I would never use the word for Common Core leading the offense. Like, I think he got led by the offense. You know, it's mean to say, but like, especially turn on the Michigan game. It's a really good example of it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad we got to a little bit of a conclusion there this time. That wasn't just 50-0 type of situation. The one game I looked at was Ole Miss Penn State, and I feel like I have a very I guess off the beaten path type of assessment of this game, or at least more than like the common perception of it. But what do you guys think of that game before I share what I think is going to happen?
Two different teams. I think Ole Miss's offense is the key for their team, and Penn State's defense is the key for theirs. Although Penn State's offense was thought to be going to be like a key point in their season, like they have Singleton in the backfield, they have Drew Aller, former 5-star quarterback. They have talent on their roster, but it wasn't really developed very well. They didn't really show out this season. Like, obviously they had a good record, but they did not do what people thought they were going to do. Some people thought they were going to be a playoff team, and they weren't. They were kind of a letdown this season from what their standards are. And this Ole Miss team also, people thought, oh, they could possibly make a splash. And although they're a really good team, Judkins, the running back, kind of had a down year. People thought he was going to be very, very good, and he's been he's not lackluster, but he's been disappointing. Their quarterback situation, they had like 5 starting quarterbacks like that could have started for them. They ended up sticking with Jackson Dart, and he was pretty solid. But he wasn't what people thought he was going to be. Like, both of these teams have had very disappointing seasons for their standards and for their expectations. And I think that they also stack it very differently. So this game's going to be really interesting. It could go either way. It can be a blowout for Ole Miss because their offense, or a shutout for Penn State because their defense.
Yeah, I think just even looking at these teams in their like standing and reputation in their respective conferences, these are both teams that are like trying to grow as a program, right, and to be where the top guys are. And for the past few years, I mean, Ole Miss obviously not being as high as Penn State has been, but just kind of still being on the outside looking in even this year. And I think whoever comes out of this game is definitely going to go in a better direction than whoever loses this game, especially with both the Big Ten and SEC getting more packed, getting more competitive. I wouldn't be surprised if, the winner of this kind of ascends higher and gets closer to that upper echelon in their own conference. I wouldn't be surprised if the loser, doesn't make it out like a bandit in this new transfer portal and recruiting class.
Yeah, and, I think I'm just going to go ahead and come out and say immediately what my opinion was. I think Penn State is favored by 3.5 points going into this game. I have Ole Miss winning this game by multiple scores. I watched Penn State all year. I live in Big Ten country. I was never sold or impressed by anything, and this is a team that just lost their defensive coordinator to Duke, so they're going to be without their defensive coordinator for this game. Going up, as you guys said, a good offense. I don't think they really have much of a prayer of this game being really close, even, honestly. But, I mean, it's bowl season. Anything can happen. Are there any other games that kind of like those gimmicky ones, those fun ones that you guys could think would make for an entertaining and good time for the fans?
I mean, not one with a ton of weight to it, but the Armed Forces Bowl with Air Force and JMU, I think that's kind of an interesting one because both have had success respectfully in like both of their seasons. And, these aren't like, knockout football teams. It's good that JMU gets to, I think, kind of test their might a little bit against Air Force team. I think it's been good, especially for who they've been playing. They started off the year really hot. JMU also started off the year really hot. So it'll see, which one of these teams has more substance to it. I got Air Force ties, so I will be rooting for the Falcons in this one. But, yeah, I think it'll be a good game either way.
one game I am also actually really excited about that I totally spaced is the Alamo Bowl, Arizona versus Oklahoma. I think that this one could two very offensive teams, two teams that I really like to watch this year, especially Arizona with Noah Fafita at quarterback. I think he's been one of the best young surprises of college football. Freshman from Servite, has a really good connection with T Mac, their wide receiver, who is like a future first round pick in my opinion. I think that this Oklahoma team, I know Dylan Gabriel's in the portal, but they do have some other backups who could definitely take his place. General Booty being one of them. I think that Arizona could definitely win by multiple scores here. They haven't really had many portal entries, but I think Oklahoma, with the talent they have on their offense, could make some noise too. It's going to be a very, very fun one to watch. I think it could be a very high-scoring one too. So
We may see the general in the Alamo. That could be exciting, ladies and gentlemen.
The
One
booty
thing,
is in the Alamo.
one game I honestly like is NC State versus Kansas State in none other but the Pop-Tart Bowl. And for those that don't know, the mascot will be eaten alive after the game. I don't know how that's going to look, but he will be eaten by all players that choose to do so, which I don't know who thought of that. They probably should be in a psych ward. But, what do you guys think of that game? Those are two pretty solid teams ranked 25th and 18th currently.
I hope the mascot screams when he's being eaten.
Okay, good take on the game there. If anybody has an actual take on how the game will unfold, let me know.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kansas State will probably run away with this one. There's been some games where they blundered. I know they're also losing Will Howard in the portal, but honestly, their strong suit, well, he has been a good quarterback for them, and I think if he goes to a good program, not only he but his team that he joins will do well. But Kansas State all around is a good team. They're good in the trenches. I just think they've been more battle tested this year, and I just think overall they're the better team. So I think Kansas State will win, and if they're favored, take the points.
Well, we'll have to see how they fare, once again, another team without their starting quarterback. And I think this is a good little segue, honestly, into... We wanted to talk about the transfer portal today. Over 1,400 Division I players have entered the transfer portal, which is just absolutely insane. I mean, what do you guys make of that? Is this the future of college football? Will this number go down, or will it go up from here?
So the more this happens, the more the NCAA is going to put some regulations on this stuff. It's also you gotta say it's the first couple of years of this being launched in college football. People are going to take advantage of it, and especially with all the NIL stuff going on, people are throwing money everywhere at these athletes. I think it's reasonable for them to enter the portal and evaluate their future. I think that the people getting mad at these players don't realize coaches can leave whenever they want, and for bigger money and for better values for themselves. Why can't players do it? I personally have seen a lot of roster turmoil this year. I mean, a lot of Oregon State's roster is heading out for different schools, and it's because, I mean, when you lose a coach who you are at the university for, you're not at the university for the fans really, unless it's a specific. Like you're a hometown kid and you love Oregon State, for instance, you grew up in Corvallis and you don't really care what the coach is. These players are here for the coaches, and when their position coach, their head coach, when they leave, it makes them a lot more inclined to enter the portal and see what their future is. And even if their coaches don't leave, the other schools are still throwing money and promises at these athletes that it's really, really intriguing for them, and it's really interesting because I've talked with a lot of athletes here who have gotten offers from other schools who are not even in the portal yet. It's tampering 101, and until there's regulations from the NCAA about this stuff, it's going to happen to every single athlete. It's gonna keep happening, and I hope there's something put in place to stop this stuff soon.
Yeah,
college football is the Wild West right now. It just seems like there are no rules, and the rules are made up whenever it's beneficial to making more money. I think it's definitely going to be more regulated. I like that you brought up coaches leaving, because I feel like in an actual scenario that would be a big reason for why guys leave, because if you get cut from the team or whatever, coach doesn't want to start, I mean, they can take away your scholarship like that. Now we're talking about funding and being able to go to school. Not all these guys can afford to go to school without a scholarship to help them out. But that being said, I do think there needs to be more laws on it, more restrictions on it. a freshman should not be like so disgruntled that they're not starting. And it's like, oh, I'm gonna go to another school. And then as a sophomore, they're not starting. Oh, I'm gonna go to another school. And like this goes on and so forth. And I think, that's kind of what it is right now. I think there definitely are good cases. I think there are people who only transfer once and they just call it and they play good football. But a lot of these guys, because a lot of them, aren't going to make it to the NFL, or at least they're trying to. This is their last hurrah in football, and a lot of them just want to play. But at the same time, it's really hard to be invested in these players and to eventually like be able to say, yes, this is a good investment to get this kid coming out of high school who's going to go to this college and put money into his education, into his, NIL deal and all that stuff and his development, because they could just leave. And I feel like right now, they don't even have good reasons for leaving. I mean, some of the quarterbacks we've seen just in general, it's shocking because you just don't feel like that would be someone who would leave if this was like 5 years ago, 10 years ago. You know what I mean? But now everyone's just so hyperactive to get out of whatever school they're in and just try to always chase a better situation. It just makes you question the validity behind the whole process at this time.
And grass isn't always greener.
Exactly.
One thing that honestly I don't see talked about much of, if at all, is I think the transfer portal makes it tougher for high school recruits. I mean, if you think about it for college coaches, they can, go ahead and, recruit a guy to come from an FCS school that just put up great numbers against college guys. It's easier for them to trust that guy than, a high school kid that's, only played, probably subpar competition in terms of athletical talent. So I think, honestly, it just hurts a lot of these younger guys, and then it just kind of causes a domino effect of making them have to transfer because they don't get the opportunities at this place because people are transferring in. So I feel for players that get put into those situations, and I think there's guys that have kind of, had that situation, such as like Ty Thompson on Oregon, former 5-star quarterback recruit. He's never been the starting quarterback at Oregon, He sat behind who was it Herbert at first? He got there, I think, when Herbert was a senior. And then I mean now he sat behind Bo Nix for a couple years. So I think it's just a tough situation for those guys, and I think that's something the NCAA needs to look into because there is something to be said about, high school recruits coming in and never being given a chance due to the transfer portal and their coach just being able to go grab a guy if they think that position on their team is too weak. What do you guys think?
I completely agree. Especially for the under-recruited 3-star guys who are fighting for a chance at a Power 5 or Group of 5 offer. It's really, really tough. I think Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, touched on this pretty well. I think that coaches are gonna like what you said, Joe. They're gonna look at these college guys and be like, they're producing at a lower level. I'm just gonna grab them instead of a high school recruit that's working and that's doing very well for himself at the high school level, but he's not getting enough looks because there's just so much talent in the portal. They're like, why would I go get a high school guy when I just have a college? When I can just have a plug and play college ready guy?
Absolutely.
So it's so tough. And I hate it for these high school athletes because if you're not a 4-star, if you're not a high 3-star, if you're not a 5-star, you're not going to get looked at. And it's so unfortunate. And I think the rosters need to be boosted up a tiny bit. I think for these high school athletes, I think they need to. Well, again, I hope there's some regulations put in place soon. But if there isn't, it's going to be pretty scary for high school recruiting looking down the line.
Absolutely. One thing that has kind of also influenced the transfer portal kind of bit is big coaching changes across the country. We've seen guys like Manny Diaz being hired by Duke, Jonathan Smith to Michigan State. Was it Elko to Texas A&M, correct?
Yeah, it was Elko.
Yeah, so, I mean, a lot of those situations kind of cause players to, have second thoughts. Oregon State has quite a few players in the portal. James Madison's coach also just left for Indiana, so I'm sure some guys from JMU will be following him as well. So what do you guys, think about some of these coaching changes? Who were the good hires of this cycle, and who were the ones that are a little bit questionable?
So, obviously, I have some bias, but Jonathan Smith is a great hire for Michigan State. I think he is a guy who will stick with their program for a while. I think it's going to take a little bit. It's going to take like 1 or 2 seasons for Michigan State to get fully back into where they were at a good pace. But again, he turned Oregon State, one of the worst Power 5 programs, into a back-to-back ranked seasons. I think Michigan State is going to be very, very happy with him and the staff he's bringing over. I don't like the hire for A&M. I think they could have definitely reached a bigger ceiling for their hire. They were hiring Mark Stoops from Kentucky for a day, and then their fans said no, so they didn't hire him. But I think they still could have waited a little bit, or at least had an intern for a season, see what he did, and then go get a bigger guy. I just don't think that A&M. I think they rushed into it too much. I think Elko, although he's a good coach, I don't think he's A&M ready. But honestly, well, I hope he proves me wrong. I hope A&M reaches success with Elko there. And then one last hire I want to get into is Diaz. I think Diaz is an interesting one because he's had some questionable tenures at other schools. But I think that Penn State isn't that hard to coach. And I think that Diaz going into that staff, I think it'll be good. I think it'll be a good fit. We'll see what happens because Penn State it's just such a weird team to read for me. I don't really know how to describe it. They're on and off for me. So
Absolutely. Jake, did you have any takes on the coaching world and the coaching landscape currently of college football?
Yeah, I think, Smith going to MSU is not only interesting decision on his part, but I also think it's good for Michigan State. Like Connor said, Oregon State was in the mud, and he brought them out of it. Elko, yeah, I mean, it's tough with A&M, but I think the toughest thing with A&M is you just also know you're paying, $80 million to a coach who's no longer going to be on your sideline with Jimbo Fisher, and obviously that's tough. But no, I think too, like Connor said, Penn State is a hard school to read just because, I don't know, how big of a loss that their defensive coordinator is going to Duke. And obviously Duke as a football program isn't as, illustrious. So, I don't really know if that'll have an impact. But I do like Jeff Lebby, who is Oklahoma's offensive coordinator, going to Mississippi State. I think that one's a good one. I think he will spice up what they're doing on offense. Now, recruiting and all that other stuff, that's too hard to read from somebody, who is the offensive coordinator with no real track record there. But, yeah, I think Lebby, the Mississippi State, could be potentially the best hire out of these and definitely a dark horse.
I like that. That's a solid take. Well, guys, we're about at that time here where we start wrapping up. Did anybody want to drop some hot takes before we dipped on out of here for the day and called it quits?
Jordan Travis better win Heisman.
All right, and we're going to wrap it up on that note, ladies and gentlemen. Peace out, everybody.